Hey all you cool cats and kittens, welcome to another deep dive into the fascinating world of history. John Oliver here, ready to drop some historical knowledge bombs on you. Buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey through time. Let's be real, history can seem as exciting as watching paint dry, but trust me on this one, it's not just about dates and dead people, it's about understanding the very fabric of our society. It's basically a giant instruction manual for understanding the hot mess that is modern politics. Imagine trying to assemble a complex piece of IKEA furniture without the manual. That's what navigating today's political landscape would be like without a grasp of history. Think of it like this. Politicians are basically toddlers playing in a sandbox. They have their toys, their territories, and their tantrums. They throw tantrums, fight over toys, and occasionally make a mess they swear they didn't do. Sound familiar? It's because these behaviors are as old as time itself. The sandbox? That's the world, shaped by centuries of wars, revolutions, and power struggles. Every grain of sand tells a story of conflict, ambition, and the quest for power. Now, I'm not saying history repeats itself exactly. If it did, we'd all be rocking powdered wigs and having sword fights on horseback. But wouldn't that be a sight to see? But there are definitely some recurring themes and patterns that pop up time and time again. These patterns are like the chorus of a song, familiar and predictable, yet always impactful. By understanding these historical echoes, we can get a better grasp on why things are the way they are, and maybe, just maybe, avoid repeating the same mistakes over and over again. It's like having a cheat sheet for the test of life. Don't get too excited though. We're talking baby steps here, people. Change doesn't happen overnight, and understanding history is just the first step in a long journey. So how do we start? By diving into the books, the documents, and the stories that have shaped our world. It's like being a detective, piecing together clues from the past to solve the mysteries of the present. Think about the great leaders and pivotal moments that have defined eras. From the rise and fall of empires to the revolutions that have reshaped societies, each event offers lessons that are still relevant today. And it's not just about the past. History is happening right now in the streets, in the halls of power, and in the hearts and minds of people fighting for change. Today's headlines are tomorrow's history lessons. So let's keep the conversation going. Let's debate, discuss, and delve into the past to better understand our present and shape our future. After all, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, but those who do learn from history, they have the power to create a better, brighter future. So let's be those people. Let's be the change makers, the history learners, and the future builders. Thanks for joining me on this historical journey. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep making history. Let's kick things off with a classic, the French Revolution. This monumental event in history is often cited as the ultimate example of what happens when people get fed up with the status quo and demand change. Picture this. It's the late 1700s, and France is basically a giant party bus driven by King Louis XVI and his queen, Marie Antoinette. The French court is living it up in the lavish palace of Versailles, throwing extravagant parties and indulging in every luxury imaginable. Problem is, it's a party bus, where only the rich kids get to have fun. The nobility and the clergy are enjoying a life of opulence, with grand feasts, elaborate costumes, and endless entertainment. They are completely disconnected from the reality of the common people. The peasants, meanwhile, are stuck in the back with no AC, flat tires, and a distinct lack of cake. They are toiling away in the fields, struggling to make ends meet and facing harsh winters with little to no food. The famous phrase, "let them eat cake," attributed to Marie Antoinette, though likely apocryphal, symbolizes the complete ignorance of the ruling class to the plight of the poor. They're starving, overtaxed, and generally fed up with the whole situation. The heavy taxation imposed on them to fund the lavish lifestyles of the nobility and the debts of the state is unbearable. The economic disparity is glaring and the social unrest is palpable. So what do? They storm the Bastille, chop off some heads and declare Liberté, égalité, fraternité. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, marks the beginning of the French Revolution. It was a symbolic act of defiance against the tyranny of the monarchy and a call for freedom, equality, and brotherhood. The French Revolution is a prime example of what happens when inequality and political instability reach a boiling point. The revolution led to the fall of the monarchy, the rise of radical political factions, and a period of intense social and political upheaval known as the Reign of Terror. It's a reminder that even the most powerful regimes can crumble when the people they rule say enough is enough. The revolution showed that the collective will of the people could overthrow even the most entrenched and seemingly invincible institutions. And guess what? We're still dealing with issues of inequality and political instability today. The echoes of the French Revolution can be seen in modern-day movements and protests around the world, where people are demanding justice, equality, and a fair share of resources. Crazy, right? Just look at the rise of populist movements around the world, fueled by economic anxiety and distrust of the establishment. These movements are often driven by a sense of disenfranchisement and a desire to upend the existing power structures. It's like the French Revolution, but with less guillotines and more angry tweets. Social media has become the new battleground for political discourse, where people can voice their frustrations and mobilize for change. The tools may have changed, but the underlying issues of inequality and the demand for justice remain the same. Speaking of revolutions, let's hop across the pond to the good old US of A. The American Revolution, you know, the one with the Declaration of Independence and those snazzy powdered wigs, was all about throwing off the shackles of British rule. Now, the American colonists weren't exactly starving peasants like the French. They were more like disgruntled middle management, annoyed about taxes and lack of representation. But hey, everyone has their breaking point, right? The American Revolution shows us that even seemingly small grievances can ignite revolutions if they tap into deeper issues of fairness and autonomy. It's like when your internet provider hikes up your bill for no reason. Eventually you are going to snap and switch providers, right? Fast forward to today, and we see echoes of this revolutionary spirit in movements fighting for social justice, economic equality, and political reform. People are still demanding their voices be heard and their rights respected, just like those rebellious colonists did centuries ago. All right, time for a trip back to the not-so-distant past, the Cold War. This period, spanning from the end of World War II in 1945 to the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, was marked by a unique kind of tension. It wasn't just about who had the most powerful army or the most advanced technology. It was about who could wield the most influence on the global stage. This wasn't your typical hot-blooded conflict with tanks and trenches. Unlike the world wars that preceded it, the Cold War was characterized by a lack of direct military confrontation between the two superpowers. Instead, it was a war of nerves, a psychological battle that played out in the minds of leaders and citizens alike. It was more like a tense, staring contest between the US and the Soviet Union, each side armed with enough nukes to turn the planet into a radioactive wasteland. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, ensured that neither side would dare to launch a first strike, knowing it would lead to their own annihilation as well. The Cold War was a battle of ideologies, capitalism versus communism, freedom versus control. The United States championed a free market economy and democratic governance, while the Soviet Union promoted a state-controlled economy and single-party system. This ideological clash influenced not just the two superpowers, but countries around the world. It played out on a global stage with proxy wars, espionage, and propaganda shaping the political landscape for decades. From the Korean War to the Vietnam War, from the Cuban Missile Crisis to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the Cold War's influence was felt in nearly every corner of the globe. The legacy of the Cold War is still felt today. The fall of the Berlin Wall and the subsequent reunification of Germany were monumental events, but they didn't erase the decades of division and distrust. The scars of the Cold War are visible in the political and social fabric of many nations. We see it in the lingering tensions between the US and Russia, the nuclear anxieties that keep us up at night, and the way we view the world through a lens of geopolitical competition. The arms race may have slowed, but the stockpiles of nuclear weapons remain, a grim reminder of the destructive potential that still exists. The Cold War reminds us that even when the guns are silent, the struggle for power and influence continues. Silent protests, diplomatic negotiations, and covert operations were all part of the Cold War's complex tapestry. It was a time when every move was calculated, every decision weighed for its potential global impact. It's a sobering thought, but an important one to remember as we navigate the complex world of international relations. The lessons of the Cold War teach us the value of diplomacy, the importance of communication, and the need for vigilance in maintaining global peace. As we face new challenges and uncertainties, the history of the Cold War serves as a guide, reminding us of the delicate balance required to avoid another catastrophic conflict.